to Product Academy Tough Stuff, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get straight to the toughest challenges in product management. I'm Tanja Lau.
And I'm Francesca Cortesi.
In each episode, we tackle one tough question. No fluff, no filler. Just candid insights from seasoned product leaders.
Our guests deliver actionable, real-world answers. Whether you're an experienced product leader or just stepping into the product world, this is your go-to podcast for sharp, tested advice, condensed for your busy schedule.
One tough challenge, practical insights, short and real.
Let's dive in.
Welcome, Stéphane, to our show. I'm very excited to have you and to talk about ShapeUp with you today.
Hello, Tanja. Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. So, ShapeUp. I think there are still a lot of people who have never heard about this before. So I think it's worth maybe spending a couple of minutes on explaining what is it all about and how is it different from what we know in terms of agile frameworks. And then we'll dive into why you chose to switch to it and what your experiences were like so far.
ShapeUp is a product development methodology developed by Basecamp, this company that created this project management tool of the same name. The main concept of ShapeUp is shipping work that matters in a fixed time box, but with a variable scope, which is very different from a Scrum, Agile, or Kanban, where we tend to have an idea of what we want to build, and then we iterate until we basically ship what we expected to do at the first place. So that's in the big lines.
Mm-hmm, great. So that makes me think about what I saw in different companies that worked with Scrum setups of like 2-week cycles, right? So 2 weeks they would go into a sprint, and in Agile and Scrum you also try to have like a shippable increment at the end of the 2 weeks. So maybe you can explain a bit more in detail, like how is the scoping part different when it comes to ShapeUp, because you also have this fixed time box. How is it different from just having a 2-week sprint in Scrum and shipping something at the end?
Absolutely. So with ShapeUp, we have cycles of 6 weeks plus 2 weeks. So an entire cycle is 8 weeks. And basically during these 6 weeks, no matter what the project is, you must be able to ship at the end of the 6 weeks. And the particularity of ShapeUp is that if you are not meeting the deadline after 6 weeks, potentially the project is canceled. So it's not shipped. So there is, of course, a bigger concept that I'm sure we're going to talk about today. But with ShapeUp, there are 2 different tracks. So the first track is the shaping part. And in parallel, you have the build track. And the build track actually builds what has been shaped in the previous cycle. So in the shaping part, you will have usually the leadership, you will have the product managers, and you can have as well engineers or designers joining basically the shaping phase, so the definition of the project, while in the build phase, this is the pure delivery part of it. And the big difference, or what is the main concept of ShapeUp in this build phase, is that the build team has full ownership on building the project. So they are not exactly told how they should do the project. So they have what we call the pitch. And then they are the ones defining what needs to be done during this build phase. And they are responsible for how it's called in the book, like hammering down the scope. So if they feel like they cannot ship everything within 6 weeks, they are the one responsible for removing parts of the scope without reducing the quality. And I think this is the biggest part, is that often we talk about MVPs and being a bit like scrappy. It's okay if we have like rough edges. But in that case, this is not the point. It's a really like fixed time box, still good quality, but then is the scope being reduced.
Wow, that sounds like a dream for the management team. You have a fixed timeline. You know exactly when you're going to get your product. You know it's going to be in good quality. So where are the pitfalls in this whole process? Because you said there have to be hands off, right? So what did it feel like to work through this process with your team? Maybe you can give us a concrete example and walk us through the different phases of like the shaping part and then handing it over. And yeah, what does this look like in practice, if you want to share?
Sure. So as a product manager, for the first cycle that we did following the ShapeUp methodology, I felt extremely lonely because I used to work very closely with my engineers, with my designers. And with ShapeUp, you have two tracks. You have the shaping part, which is usually shaping in isolation. So it means that you do not necessarily have access to all the resources you have to shape basically an initiative or project. Because the resources are allocated to the build phase, so meaning the delivery. So that was a bit hard, basically, to put together this pitch. And we had to pool resources in order to make it happen. Otherwise, I felt really like alone in front of a blank canvas. So one example of an initiative end-to-end. So in India, we had struggled charging customers. Because we're using credit card, and this is not the most favorite payment method over there. The one that they prefer is called UPI. Unfortunately, our payment providers, such as Stripe, were not providing this payment method to us. So we had to explore other alternatives, other providers, in order to enable payments, or at least efficient payments in India. Unfortunately, the way that this payment method works is very different from credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, and others. So we had to dig very deep on how our system could integrate with this new provider that we found. And so this is where basically there is both, or at least a trio, let's call it this way, a product trio joining. So product manager plus technical leads and eventually a designer. But in that case, the designer was not actually part of the group because it was maybe too technical. So that's where ShapeUp can be quite interesting, is that we are going to allocate resources at the right place. And in that case, so for the shaping of an initiative, it's important to have, for that initiative, to have an engineer, but the designer was not necessarily required, except maybe a few messages. So the way that it works for the shaping is that there is a pitch, so that's the document. So instead of having a PRD in some companies or having user stories, basically this is the pitch. And the pitch is made out of several sections. So we have the problem, we have the appetite, which I will cover later. We have the solution, the must-have, the pitfalls, and then all the metrics, basically how do we measure success. And so, first of all, as a product manager, what is important is to define the problem. Because this pitch will be then handed over to the delivery team, and they really need to understand why are we doing this. So they feel the motivation and they can put themselves into the shoes of the end user. And then there is the appetite, and the appetite can be either 6 weeks or 2 weeks. So 6 weeks, then it would mean that the initiative will take the whole cycle. And 2 weeks means that we can accumulate up to 3 initiatives during this 6-week cycle. And where the collaboration mostly happen is with the let's say the product trio, happens in the definition of the solution. And this is where we need basically to have all the different inputs from everybody to clear out as much as possible the unknown. But there is a little caveat, because the point is not to write a PRD with absolutely every single details, so the build team can just execute by the book and not ask any question. So the definition of the solution must be just high level enough, so the team that will build has a clear understanding of, okay, they are trying to do this, but we can build it the way we want it. And we have time to explore during the 6 weeks how we are going to make it happen. So that's where basically the expertise of engineers and the designer are very helpful. And in that case of this integration of this payment method, we had to have a lot of calls with various providers, even like with external agencies who already implemented that on their system. So we would basically gain knowledge from them. Once this initiative is shaped, basically it goes into one more step before it's handed over to the team, which is called the betting table. And at the betting table, basically that's where the leadership gathers and decides which initiative is going to be built next. And they could say, nope, we don't want this initiative. So they need to be convinced in a way. So you could think a little bit of you are building a startup and you are going to pitch in front of investors and you need to convince them that they need to put their money on it. So that's why it's called the betting table. So they will revise what is the appetite of the team for that project and so on. And eventually they will accept it. Then comes the next cycle during which the team, so the build team, will pick up the project if selected. And during this cycle, so of course they are kind of aware already about the initiative, what is to be built, but they are going to spend the first part of the cycle to eliminate all the unknowns that they have, because even though there have been a lot of work done defining the problem, defining the solution, there will still be a lot of unknowns, such as how do we integrate these payment methods? Like what are the API calls that we need to do? How is this going to work with our current system, etc.? So they need to clear out all the questions within the first part. And after that, then they will have to deliver. So it takes 6 weeks. And hopefully by the end of the 6 weeks, everything is shipped actually. And after the 6 weeks comes a 2 weeks cool down, which is unrelated from the build cycle or the shaping cycle. This is a moment where technically engineers can pick up almost any task that they want in order to improve the platform or eventually polish a few things from other initiatives.
Cool. Okay, so I have a million questions.
Yes.
So it sounds like we're talking about initiatives that have a certain bigger scope for this kind of framework. What happens to things that can be done in less than 2 weeks or could be done, because it would be a waste to stretch them out to 2 weeks if they could be done in one, right? Or do you have, like, in parallel to these bigger initiatives, do you have other work streams that run in parallel with bug fixes, with other things that need to be done? Or is the team really solely focused on one initiative, one shape up project at a time?
I would say that's one of the challenges of Shape Up. So at SmallPDF, we have 3 product teams, and the 3 of them are focusing on Shape Up. So they run with the cycles. When it comes to the small task, indeed, they are not stretched to a 2 weeks long initiative. They are either added to the backlog for the cooldown, or that's how we tweaked a little bit the process, is that we have introduced what we call grab bags. So in the book of Shape Up, they mention grab bags, but this is for the cooldown normally. But for us, we kind of created a placeholder of 2 weeks that is called the grab bags initiative. And we have, let's say, a regular backlog there. So on the most important things that needs to be done and that cannot wait 6 weeks basically to be done. So this is how we tweaked it and how we managed to get things done despite this fixed time box of 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And the team, can you say something about the delivery team? Is that stable? And then they just have to deal with whatever initiative is given to them? Or do you set up the teams in a way that they have the skills needed for this specific initiative? So do you reshuffle the teams all the time for the initiatives, or do you have stable teams over time?
We are reshuffling them all the time, based, as you said, based on the resources needed and the skills needed for that given initiative. So some initiatives, sometimes they don't require a back-end engineer. So we have only a front-end engineer and designer. Sometimes we might need actually a marketing person to join the team or a copywriter. And then basically the team is formed around the initiative. And actually this happens at the betting table. We have the list of projects or initiatives that are ready to be betted on. And based as well on the availability on the next cycle, based on holidays and things like that, then we will pick certain initiative or not accordingly and shape the teams or at least allocate the resources accordingly.
And are some people in your team sometimes then idle and are not assigned to a project because there was just no initiative for their skill set at this point? Or do you always try to use all people in the team and have them work on something?
So they will always be allocated with a little caveat again. So maybe as well, our platform is a bit specific, but we are very front-end driven. So it means that we are leveraging every single front-end resources that we have to deliver on those initiatives. However, then when it comes to the backend, our backend team works more like as a platform team because they are not only serving SmallPDF, but they are as well serving Sign.com and as well like other parts of the company and supporting the finance team, the data team. So we have a bit more than just regular product improvements. So that's why our backend team is not only is, let's say, 50% allocated to ShapeUp and then 50% allocated to business as usual.
Okay, so that was one of the things that were not so clear in my head right now. Okay, I'm super curious to hear a bit more about what has changed since you introduced this system into your IT landscape. I think it's been 5 months at SmallPDF roughly. So can you say a bit about the process of introducing it? Was there resistance? How did you approach it? And also like what has changed since then? What have you learned? Do you regret it? All the things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has been a very interesting journey, I would say. So first of all, the reason for introducing ShapeUp at SmallPDF was that in 2023, so we went through a restructuration of the company, and as part of that, we revamped completely our platform. So we went from very siloed tools into a more like a comprehensive PDF software solution. And so during that time, we had a very clear vision. And we were in kind of a bit of like feature team, delivering. And when we arrived at the end of this vision, of delivering the entire vision, we realized a few things. The first one was, okay, we're almost at the end, then what's next? And the other thing we realized is that we were kind of fine-tuning the small details, but we had close to no impact anymore. So we had like a very successful impact with the bigger scope, I would say, of the initiative, of delivering the vision. But then we were kind of stuck, not progressing anymore, despite actually delivering nonstop, but there was just two small changes. And because of those 2 intensive years, we actually created silos. So the product teams were very, as the CEO used to say, that we had castles. And basically, we could not work on the surfaces of the others. So everybody was very defensive of their own scope. And it meant that, the collaboration was not really happening. And so those were the reasons of switching to ShapeUp, of like, okay, we want to know, or we want to define what is next. We want to have a bigger impact, and we want to make sure that people are collaborating together. So thankfully, we have Eddie, our VP of engineering in the company, who used to work at Tamedia, and they used to have, or maybe they still have it. They still have ShapeUp as a methodology over there. And so that's why he brought basically his expertise into the company. And 5 months ago, we switched from almost one day to the other to ShapeUp with very little ramp up. So that was a bit hard at the first place. It was a bit hard at the beginning because everybody is kind of brainwashed or formatted in a way, or used to the regular Scrum / Kanban type of methodology. And suddenly we needed to really shift our minds. And suddenly we needed to shift our mindset to a completely different approach where product teams are not the usual cross-functional teams with PMs, engineers and designers, but rather like a bit split, etc. So, and as well, this the full ownership of the delivery team, this is something new. Because in regular teams, the product manager will still be very, very hands-on. And then if the team have question, if the team has question, then we can always ask the PM or ask other people around to basically unlock. But in that case, they are really responsible of the end-to-end process of the delivery. So this is what was quite hard, and we needed basically 3 cycles or so to find our own way of adapting ShapeUp to our needs. So now when it comes to what has changed and what is great about ShapeUp is that by going through this exercise of writing the pitch, it really removes a lot of initiatives. Because often in like a 2-week sprint cycle, we might have an idea of building something, but without thinking about the full picture. And then suddenly you start building something, and after a while you get stuck, or the scope increases, and you get stuck working for that on that project for a very long time, or at least more than expected. While here, by going through this exercise, not only it gives visibility to the management on what is coming next, but as well it gives some kind of incentive for the team to take the full ownership, to be feeling proud of what they have delivered. And as well, it's long enough, those 6 weeks, and short enough as well, to feel like there is an end to it and we have delivered an impact. So I think this is mostly what has changed is the dynamic, of course. And I forgot the most important thing as a product manager is that we have time finally to actually do a lot of discovery and coming up with much bigger initiative. Because with Scrum or Kanban or like the regular process, it's very easy to fall into this rhythm of all those admin tasks on daily basis, with all the different ceremonies and supporting the engineers with testing and answering all the questions. And at the end, we are kind of like drained and we don't have time for discovery. And with ShapeUp, I think now we finally have time to do a lot of user interview, to do a lot of discovery, user testing. And that's really exciting because the quality of the work being done is so much higher compared to before.
That's super interesting. So to me, it sounds like it's a bit of a middle ground between like Agile, where we were told to like make things smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of batches and produce shippable increments very fast. And on the other hand of the scale, big projects, waterfall projects that take months and months to deliver. So it sounds to me like it's kind of a middle ground in between, still like limiting the time you invest. That's your appetite for risk, your appetite in this setup, but at the same time keeping the quality high. We're almost out of time, but I would like to ask you 2 more questions. One is, whom would you recommend this kind of framework to? Like, what does need to be in place? How does the company need to be in terms of maturity or team size so that they can really like leverage the benefits of this kind of framework? That's the one question. And the second one would be, which kind of pitfalls would you watch out for? Like now looking back at the last 5 months, would you do anything differently? Do you have any really good advice for people who are starting on this journey?
Absolutely. So on the type of company, I would say that you need to have a product that is mature enough. So for a startup, it would not work because for a startup, you need to iterate in very fast iteration. You need to listen to your end users, your customers, and you need to iterate extremely fast. So your product must be mature enough. And in the company, you need to make sure you still have a certain seniority of your team. Because they will have to take the full ownership of the initiatives to be shaped. So they need to be skilled enough to think about everything almost without so much hand-holding. So I think this is something that is very important. And as well, it will never be easy. From all the feedback that I heard, it's always very hard to introduce ShapeUp. There is a lot of pushback. So in order to basically make it successful, I think a lot of coaching is required. So you need to still bring someone or that has experience that will be with the team to reassure them and guide them through the process until the moment that they really feel confidence and they really understand how the mechanic works. And I think like Agile, nobody is doing it by the book and ShapeUp is the same. You need to adapt it to your own structure. I would say that in terms of size of the team, you don't necessarily need to have a big team to have ShapeUp. It could be only with 2-3 teams, like we do have at SmallPDF, but it could be as well on much bigger teams. So at SmallPDF, we don't have 2 tracks. We don't have ShapeUp on one side and then a regular Scrum rhythm on the other side. But on bigger in bigger companies, maybe it's worthwhile trying it as well. The pitfall is that if you start having teams focusing on or working with ShapeUp and others not, and you start shuffling resources around, it's going to be very hard in really going into ShapeUp and having all the benefits of it. Because again, we are used to a Scrum type of rhythm. Most of the, at least it's an industry standard. So people will go back very easily to their comfort zone a little bit, and they might not take the full ownership, for instance, or the shaping part might not be as detailed as required or too detailed. So that's I think some of the pitfalls. Yes, I'm sure there are so many more pitfalls to think of.
No, that's a great start. And I think it sounds like a framework where you can give your more senior tech team a chance to take over product responsibilities, to take over like a very wide lens on the product, and to shape it with a lot of impact and a lot of autonomy, which is something that senior tech people really crave. So it may be also a good way to keep your talent in the team by giving them more responsibility. But definitely sounds also like something where we have to reshuffle roles and rethink the product manager role also to fit it to this setup. It was so interesting talking to you. I know there are a ton more questions out there about this ShapeUp methodology, but we have a lot of links in the show notes. And of course, you're also available maybe on LinkedIn and other channels. Absolutely. To maybe answer some questions or exchange experiences, compare notes in case someone else is also trying it at the moment. And maybe in a couple of months, we'll invite you back here to tell us more about your ShapeUp journey to see how it has evolved over time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tanja.
Thank you so much, Stéphane. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Product Academy Tough Stuff.
We hope today's tough question gave you practical, actionable insights.
If you enjoyed the episode, do us a favor and leave a rating or review. It will help us grow the podcast and make future episodes even better.
Got a question for us? Send an email to toughstuff@productacademy.ch and ask away. We read any submission and might answer yours in a later episode.
Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time with another tough challenge to tackle.
Until then, take care.